Picture this. You're walking through ancient Rome in 67 AD. The marble streets gleam in the sunlight, the air filled with the chatter of merchants, the clatter of sandals, and the smell of bread and roasted meats drifting from street vendors. The forum is alive. Senators, philosophers, soldiers, and common citizens, all buzzing with the energy of an empire at its height. Statues of gods and emperors tower above, casting long shadows that remind everyone who truly holds power here. And then you see him. Emperor Nero, the most powerful man on earth, parading with his new wife. She's draped in silks imported from the East, heavy with golden jewelry, moving with a grace that commands the gaze of the entire crowd. People bow their heads as he passes, whispering prayers, but their eyes follow her. Stunning, elegant, yet beneath the awe, a chilling murmur spreads through the crowd like a ripple across water. That woman was once a boy named Sporus. What you're about to hear is not just a bizarre tale of ancient Rome, it is one of the darkest stories in history. It's a story about grief, obsession, and unchecked power. A story of how an emperor's madness twisted him into something monstrous, and how a teenager was turned into a living doll. Nero didn't begin his reign as a tyrant. When he came to power at just 16 years old, many Romans saw hope in him. The empire had endured cruel rulers before, but this boy emperor lowered taxes, funded public games, and filled the people's lives with festivals, plays, and entertainment. He was adored by the crowds who cheered his name. To many, it looked like Rome was entering a golden age, but absolute power is dangerous. It isolates, corrupts, and feeds delusion. And by his late 20s, Nero had descended into paranoia, cruelty, and madness. At the center of this madness was a woman named Poppaea Sabina. She was ambitious, sharp, breathtakingly beautiful, and she knew how to hold power. Nero was captivated. To have her, he divorced his first wife, Octavia, and showered Poppaea with palaces, perfumes, silks, and precious jewels. She became empress, but she was never just decoration. She advised Nero, mocked him, even stood up to him in front of others. To most, she was untouchable, the woman who could tame the emperor. But to Nero, her sharp tongue became unbearable. One night in 65 AD, while pregnant with their second child, Poppaea criticized him. We don't know exactly what was said. Ancient historians give us conflicting details, but they agree on the outcome. In a sudden fit of rage, Nero struck her. The blow was fatal. Poppaea, the love of his life, the mother of his child, the only one who could reach him, was dead at his own hands. For the first time, Nero confronted something his power could not undo. No amount of wealth, no decree, no sacrifice to the gods could bring Poppaea back, and his grief consumed him. His mind, already unsteady, began to fracture. It was then that Sporus entered his life. Just a teenager, recently freed from the slavery, with delicate features and haunting eyes that, disturbingly, resembled Poppaea's. To Nero, this was not coincidence. This was destiny, a second chance. But it would come at a horrifying cost. Sporus wasn't asked. He wasn't courted. He wasn't loved. Nero ordered physicians to perform a brutal procedure to make the boy more feminine. His very body was altered to fit the emperor's fantasy. Then Nero gave him a new name, Poppaea's name. He draped him in her silks, clasped her jewels around his neck, and taught him to walk, to speak, to move as she had. Sporus was not allowed to be himself. He was being sculpted, piece by piece, into a replica of a dead empress. And then Nero staged a spectacle that stunned Rome. In front of senators, soldiers, and citizens, he held a full imperial wedding. The emperor stood dressed as a groom, and at his side, Sporus appeared in the white veil of a Roman bride. The vows were recited, the union declared. The most powerful man in the world had just married his dead wife's ghost. For the next 2 years, Sporus lived as Nero's empress. At banquets, he sat beside the emperor in the place reserved for queens. At public events, he appeared dressed in Poppaea's gowns, presented as the returned empress. He traveled with Nero to Greece, where the emperor competed in lavish games and performances, with Sporus dutifully at his side. Every smile, every gesture, every word was an act, carefully performed to satisfy Nero's delusion. Imagine waking up each day in chambers decorated to remind you of someone you never were. Imagine being called by her name, forced to wear her jewels, expected to remember moments that never happened to you. This was not simply abuse. This was erasure. Sporus's identity was stripped away until nothing was left but a hollow reflection of another. But Nero's empire was rotting beneath him. Rebellions broke out across the provinces. Generals rose against him. The Senate, once his tool, declared him an enemy of the state. In 68 AD, abandoned and panicked, Nero fled Rome with a handful of loyalists, Sporus among them. Together, they hid in a villa outside the city. But when soldiers closed in, Nero faced the one fate he could not bear: humiliation. He chose suicide, muttering that the world was losing an artist. Sporus, still at his side, watched the emperor's bloody end. With Nero dead, Sporus might have found freedom, but instead he became a trophy, passed from one man of power to another, always dressed as a woman, always called Poppaea, always paraded as the emperor's ghost bride, until Rome's chaos brought yet another ruler, Vitellius, and with him a new and final cruelty. Vitellius announced that Sporus would be forced to play the role of a mythological rape victim in the Colosseum, a stage performance of humiliation and violence before tens of thousands of jeering spectators. For Sporus, who had endured years of being molded, displayed, and used, this was too much. Facing the loss of the last shred of dignity, he made the only choice left to him. He ended his own life before the spectacle could take place. He was barely 20 years old. Sporus's story is often told as a grotesque curiosity of Roman history. But it is more than that. It is a story of how absolute power can strip someone of their humanity, how grief can curdle into obsession, and how a single person's madness can warp the lives of everyone around them. Nero has gone down in history as a tyrant, a murderer, a man who fiddled while Rome burned. But Sporus, the boy forced to become a dead woman, is remembered only in fragments, his life overshadowed by the emperor who stole it. And yet, his final act was not obedience, it was defiance. In choosing death over degradation, Sporus reclaimed something Nero had stolen: the right to decide his own fate. Across 2,000 years, his story forces us to ask, when history celebrates emperors, generals, and rulers whose stories are silenced in their shadow, whose voices are erased, and what does it say about power, then and now, that a life could be twisted so cruelly to serve another's fantasy? If you found this story haunting, hit that like button. Subscribe for more forgotten histories the textbooks left behind. And tell me in the comments, should we dive deeper into the hidden, darker lives of Rome's most notorious rulers?